The White Book by Makavelli, Chapter 1990, De Pluribus Unum.
This is to be the conflict that ushers in the New World Order.
George H.W. Bush.
Imagine this, not 20 years since the last conflict.
Americans found themselves confronting yet another enemy, and by chance many of the players from that drug war had repeat performances in this oil war. King George sent the usual suspects from the Pentagon, and from the heartland, patriotic parents sent a ripened harvest of expendable nieces and nephews to join the madness in the Middle East. If they survived the tour, their rich Uncle Sam had promised to pay their way through college.
In the streets, that and the prospect of training with the world's most advanced killers had changed the minds of OGs. By now, they had files on us anyway, and for some time, oracular generals had been sending their best and brightest to learn the art of war directly from the enemy.
Saudi Arabia, near Dharan, Thanksgiving Day.
It had been 4 years since Staff Sergeant Lawrence made the switch from Compton Knucklehead to Camp Pendleton Jarhead, and since day one, he knew he was a lifer. He slowed the Humvee and allowed the M2 Bradley to catch up with him as he led the vehicle along an enormous line that had been drawn in the sand to a newly constructed, an extra sterile area where the Marines of the 1st Regiment Kilo Company were locked, loaded, and waiting in a heightened state of readiness. Sergeant Lawrence loved his job, even missions like this one, escorting a British television network camera crew to the front for a public relations piece. It was just another chance to lead by example and prove to the brass what the men under his command already knew. He was deserving of the title, youngest in charge.
Not a day went by that Lawrence didn't pledge allegiance to the Five and his family and thank the God for the gift of the Corps. The BTN crew wasted no time getting set up. After a few minutes, the cameraman signaled for the condescending young female reporter to go to work in
3, 2, 1, rolling. Hello. To the north of us is the Saudi Arabian border. On the other side of the berm lies Kuwait, a barren peril of land roughly the size of Hawaii. It's a place most Westerners may have gone their entire lives unaware of, yet for the past 110 days, nearly 200,000 NATO coalition troops have been busy battling flies, boredom, and triple-digit heat. But none have yet to face an enemy. In America, frugal taxpayers have begun to question the true nature of this mission and its motives. We're here on this American holiday to boost the morale of this elite U.S. Marine Corps division, and perhaps see if they have the answer to what it is exactly they're risking their lives for.
Even though all his Marines had been briefed on what they could and could not say, the reporter's questions worried Sergeant Lawrence a little bit. Through his looks, he assessed each member of the unit standing tall, looking good and sticking to the script, all but the last 5. Recently, an incident in the desert had the sergeant watching them very carefully. Private First Class Remus Murrah was badass, a stick of dynamite ready to pop, a 6'1", 20-year-old, amped-up Anglophile from Yuma, Arizona. He loved skateboarding to Metallica, busting guns and banging women, in that order.
What made you join the Corps?
I wanted to be the leanest, meanest fighting machine in the world. I can be that here, and the uniforms are bitchin'.
What do you hope this war will accomplish?
What? I don't know what war accomplishes, but every generation has them. My father served in Nam, his father in World War II, and his in. What was that war? Whatever. I'll be glad when I get to fire my weapon. It's all this waiting around that I can't stand. I want to get some. Hoorah!
That reminds me, would you like to say hello to someone back home?
Yeah, my brother and my girlfriend.
Can I give a message to my brother?
Sure.
Tim, hey, he's gonna get this? Tim, what's up?
I love you, babe. Keep my oyster tight, all right. She knows what I mean.
He'll understand.
6'3", Lance Corporal Mario Santana was a 24-year-old Dominican refugee from Gainesville, Florida. A strong, tough, family man and rad team player who had taken it upon himself to learn some Arabic since he had arrived. He was exactly what the military was looking for.
How do you feel being a foreign-born Marine?
I am a Marine first, an American second, and a Dominican third.
Coming from a third-world country, do you feel connected to the plight of the Kuwaiti people?
I've spoken with some Iraqis,
he said with an accent.
I respect them, but they have to realize they have been lied to. I know what it is like to live under the rule of a corrupt government. America is the country that gave me and my family the opportunity to make something of ourselves.
It was an opportunity for me to defend America, the country which has given freedom to me and to my family. And it is an honor to fight for that freedom.
In a democracy like America, there is no censorship. You are free to choose your leaders. Only by forcing these rogue states around the world understand that, can we have peace on earth. Until then, it is our job to impose God's will. Democracy.
For each of his 18 years, Private Bobby Davenport had lived in a double-wide trailer in Odessa, Texas. He was a slender, joke-cracking white boy of 5'10", but he didn't know it. Ever since he could remember, all he ever wanted to be was a gangsta.
How does it feel to be a Marine?
He answered with a vapid,
"Hoorah."
Why did you join the Corps?
Sports was the only thing keeping me out of jail, and that life ended the light I broke my leg. Friday, October 13, 1989, I was lying on the 50-yard line looking up at the lights, and I remembered them hoes at juvie hall saying it was this or jail. I'd already been to jail, so I signed up for the delayed entry program on November 5th. The recruiter kept yapping about GI Bills, signing bonuses, and how I'd be getting pussy all over the world. I wasn't thinking about no college, but I figured that signing bonus could pay for a whole lot of pussy. The recruiter said,
"For the next 3 years, the government is going to pay for everything you need, and they're going to show you how to put your foot in a motherfucker's ass."
I said, "What the fuck?" I had to get out of Odessa. Don't nothing live with my mama but a bunch of meth heads, and that trailer was getting hella small.
Back home, I'd be working some nowhere job. Nobody even know I was alive.
What do you hope to accomplish here?
I'm here to get my weight up.
What are you going to do when you get back home?
When I get that DD-214 and my freedom, I'm gonna shoot through Houston and put some green in the air with my niggas in the 5th Ward. I'm gonna get draped up and dripped out, sip on some syrup and just trip out.
I've been to Houston and Odessa. There's not much difference.
Davenport left.
See there, a southern boys can make your mind play tricks. Our guys is just real gangster-ass niggas like the press. They make $600 a fucking hour, and they not care about nothing but the money and the power.
Private Malcolm Cottle was a spoiled, stout, husky 19-year-old narcissist from New Jersey. He considered himself a puppy until 4 years ago when he and his mother moved to the south side of Chicago.
Why did you join the Corps?
I ain't even supposed to be here. I'm supposed to be in college, but my punk-ass parents got a divorce and blew all the money. Now I gotta do this shit. This ain't me. Ain't no justice, man. Life ain't fair.
What do you think is America's reason for being here?
I don't know and I don't care. I'm just worried about getting out of here. I've got a life to live.
I'm 20 years old, and I was dumb enough to sign a contract. I can hear their fucking bombs already, and I'm fucking scared, yeah.
Suddenly Cottle's face lit up and he began wiping away sweat.
Who all is going to see this? Maybe this can help get me out of here.
No, sir, I don't think that it can.
Cottle screamed at the camera.
Why the fuck am I talking to you then? Fuck this.
Then he broke down and water came streaming from his eyes.
Somebody get me out of here. I want to go home.
Average. That was Corporal John Doe's description. A biracial kid from one of the flyover states. He'd never been anywhere nor done anything, and the odds of anyone ever knowing his name or face were slim. All his life it seemed that a stint in the Corps would be his ticket to a world he could only dream about. He knew now that two had been conspired.
Well, that was quite bonkers, wasn't it?
Yes, ma'am.
But we've been watching you, Corporal. You seem to be coping quite well. How?
By watching you, and you and you and you.
He pointed to the other members of the crew.
I want to thank you all for being so fucking funny.
I'm pleased we could entertain you,
she said, laughing.
But can you tell me what makes us so funny?
Sure, but first you tell me why you're putting on this production, asking questions that you already know the answers to.
Like what?
The most important one for starters, why are we here?
Please, enlighten us, Corporal. Tell us what you think is America's reason for being here.
All right, for the longest, I thought it was just about the kings, you know, George and Abdullah, protecting their interests in oil. But something happened to me in the desert, and now I see the real picture.
Liberty City, just south of Kuwait City, 7 days earlier.
He remembered being on patrol. Mira Santana, Davenport, Cottle, and him. Routine patrol in grid for 86755. The same grid they'd patrolled at least 150 times in the last month. He remembered there was an explosion, a big one that blew them out of the Humvee they were in, and they never saw it coming. It must have been an AED. But the worst part was that they weren't dead yet. He remembered waking up in the sand and being blinded by the sun. His hearing was coming back, and it brought with it voices. Angry Arab voices, and his head was covered with a burlap. Everything went black, and he didn't remember much after that.
Oh, bravo! Corporal Doe, wake up!
His body ached, and his mind was misty. But this time the voices he heard were friendly. The corporal opened his eyes and found himself in a small, round, windowless room like the inside of a well. Other than one heavy door secured by bars, the only other opening had to be 25 feet above his head, and it too was covered by a bar. Mira gave him a cant.
Drink something, bro. You've got to be dehydrated.
He gulped almost all of it before asking.
How long have I been out?
You've got traumatic brain injury,
answered Murrah.
You've been drifting in and out for almost 3 days.
For him it felt more like 40. He noticed Davenport on the ground with the ear to a pipe coming from the wall.
Where are we?
Asked Doe.
Where's Santana and Cottle?
Davenport motioned to him.
Hold that down. We're in some sort of training camp. They've got Santana and Cottle in another room. We've been talking to them through this pipe, but they're in prayer now.
Doe whispered.
Prayer?
Yeah,
said Murrah.
The fucking ragheads ain't gonna do shit to them. They got them going to madrasas. They said they were Talib, or brothers who had yet to learn the truth, but you, me and Davy were knights on a modern-day crusade. They said our fate was in Allah's hands.
Fuck.
Doe sighed.
Who are they? Republican Guard. How did they get us?
Negative.
Murrah replied.
They ain't down with Saddam. They offered to help the Saudis get him out of Kuwait. But the Saudis went with the U.S. instead. These dudes are Al-Qaeda.
Al-Qaeda?
Yeah,
whispered Davenport. They are part of a jihadist network called Holy War Inc. Nizari Ismail is from North Africa. Hamas and the PLO from Palestine. The Taliban from Afghanistan. Hezbollah from Lebanon. HUM from Pakistan.
These motherfuckers got cells all over. They told Santana they've been planning this for weeks. We are being held for ransom. A thought crossed Doe's mind that the others had already come to grips with.
The United States does not negotiate with terrorists.
His hope was fading as he managed another question.
What do they want?
Murrah shrugged and whispered.
All we know is some rich raghead named Osama bin Laden has declared war on America. Tell him what he said, Davy.
Private Davenport began repeating parts of the fatwa that Santana had been reciting to him over the past few days.
Bin Laden said that for years American bankers and oil barons, with the aid of their secret police and the World Trade Association, have moved in the shadows, destabilizing Islamic nations, robbing their people of food and work, stealing their resources, and placing sanctions on their economy.
He says, like a virus, we poison their lands, murder innocent men, infect their women, and besmirch the minds of their children with our filthy American values, all while we plunder all from the Persian Gulf and conflict diamonds from Africa.
And according to him, we'll send at a time wicked Zionists and the pirate state of Israel steal the Holy Land from under their feet. He's called upon all Muslims to restore caliphate and launch a raid on the infidels. In bin Laden's words, according to the hadiths of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, jihad is not only the duty of all Arab people, but the way of brothers from every race, religion worldwide, who wish to remain free from the mark of the beast and away from the talons his new world order. Bin Laden has sent shaddas around the globe to recruit members and build training camps, one in every city, and he vows that one day soon that will rise up and he will hear about them in the media, inshallah.
It was hard for Doe to understand what he was hearing, but even harder to comprehend was the smile creeping across Davenport's face.
You know something I don't, Private? What's your smile about?
Murrah yelled.
This prick's got Stockholm Syndrome. He likes the camel junkies.
Fuck you, Murrah. I said they remind me of the homies back in the hood. Besides the praying, they don't do shit but train, listen to music, and get high all day, but I never said I liked them.
You fucking wigger!
Fuck you, skinhead. They squared off. Break it up, said Doe. That's an order. He wondered how they'd survived this long. Then he tuned them out, stood up, and tried to get his bearings. He paced the room looking for a way to escape, trying to piece together a plan, patting himself down, looking for anything he could use as a weapon, anything his captors may have missed. There was nothing left except a tape in his inside pocket. He took it out and studied it. That's when he remembered what Sergeant Lawrence said when he'd given it to him.
It's only music, but music can bring hope when all other hope has failed.
Doe figured that time was now. He imagined he wasn't there. He imagined he was back in the rear listening to the tape while he ran laps. In his daze, he put the cassette to his ear. Murrah nudged Davenport and whispered,
"Dude's lost it. Bro, you look crazy," said Davenport. "Like that skinny motherfucker in Escape from New York. You remember that shit? He did his imitation. You touch me, you die." Then Murrah did his.
Yeah, the Duke! Yeah, the Duke!
You're a number one. They all started laughing. It felt good to laugh, but the feeling went out the door when it burst open and 6 masked and heavily armed mujahideen ran into the room. Dressed in a white robe, the leader was waving his jambia. When he realized Corporal Doe was awake, he rushed over, knocked him to the ground, put the dagger to his neck, and yelled in Arabic,
"Your government has abandoned you. They have refused our demands, and now the hours of your life are numbered. That the next sunrise will be the last one you see."
The tape had flown out of his hand. One of the guards picked it up and put it in his pocket. All were yelling Allah Akbar as they left the room. When the coast was clear, Davenport called to Santana. "What's going on, man?"
Bad news. That was the leader of this operation, Abu Saab al-Zakari, he says. Santana stopped speaking. After a few minutes, Mira went to the pipe and asked him again. It was hard for Santana to say the words. He says they're going to behead you tomorrow. The room went quiet. Hours passed in silence, but no one slept. They figured they could do that tomorrow when they were dead.
Doe wished for a moment that he had never woken up. He believed for a while that he was still dreaming and none of it was real.
I mean, really, who's to say what's really real without something real to compare it to? And reality as he'd known it had just been shattered. He had an ineffable feeling that the rest of the world knew a secret that he and his fellow Americans didn't. The secret that the world was at war, and it had been since time immemorial.
It was late the next day when the door burst open. Zarqawi gave them the sacks again and led them above ground. The Marines heard Babel while walking across the compound, banter all around them that they couldn't understand. Finally, one of the guards said, "Kif," and there was a knock at a door. When it opened, they were treated to a familiar sound, tracks from a demo tape that they all knew well, music from a then unknown artist introduced to them by Sergeant Lawrence.
They got us out here listening to music from Apocalypse Now, when we should be listening to this,
he'd said.
Santana and Cottle rushed them and removed the sacks. "You lucky fucks, you're not dying today." Doe asked them why. "It was the tape," said Cottle. "They've been playing it all night. They love it. They say that he is a poet, a prophet, a revolutionary, and a warrior all in one. Last night they asked us all these questions about it and asked why you had it. I told them it was our favorite. It was all we listened to. Then today, they said that maybe you having this was a sign and that you'd been granted
Nanawati, asylum. A man approached them and spoke. Santana translate. He said, "Relax and eat. You're in Beit al-Salam. Soon we go to prayer and then to the Mafri." By now, copies of the tape had been circulated around the compound, and it was playing in the Mafrij. Located on the second level, the Mafrij was more airy and comfortable than the other rooms they'd been in. But besides that, it looked like an ordinary room with bags of moist reddish-green leaves, ice-cold bottles of water, and a worn Quran. But as they were to soon find out, it was a magical place where minds were opened and Jahiliyyah was broken. The Marines entered and took their places in the room of Shura, carefully observing men with complexion and beards of all sizes talking with large wads of leaves stuck in their jaws. Davenport was the first to ask, "Hey, can we get some of that?" A man they referred to only as the Tall One answered in English, "Yes, you may." He passed Davenport a bag and he immediately stuck a lump in his mouth. "What is it?" asked Murrah. "Pot," answered the man. The Marines looked at him. "It is like tobacco, but there are different kinds and each produce a different effect. That one there gives you energy."
Mira snatched up a handful and the others followed. Soon everyone was talking different dialects of Arabic, Farsi, Dari, Punjabi, and English. Corporal Doe couldn't tell if it was the cot or the concussion. But after a while, it seemed that they could all understand the discussion. He listened as camp's spiritual advisor and emir tacky touched the flag on his uniform.
Tell me how you can pledge allegiance to a flag that does not respect you. We see that in your country as it is in ours. Your rights as humans are being stripped away. In your sights, people are being jailed without due process and murdered at alarming rates. But for some reason, your people refuse to fight back against the Gestapo tactics. Tell me, are they frightened of their government? If so, they hair it backwards. They are only men with titles. Our people do not bow to men or their titles.
You must realize that our war is not with Americans, but with your leaders, murderers, warmongers, and members of a centuries-old secret society called the Brotherhood of Death. Today they are known worldwide as Skull and Bones. The symbol was well known where Santana was from. "You mean like the skull and crossbones on a pirate flag?" he asked. "Exactly," said Emir Taki with an infinitesimal hint of a British accent. "But it represents much more. The symbol has been used by the Knights Templar as well as the Roman legions. In fact, the area where Jesus was crucified was called the Place of the Skulls. And to the Master Mason, the skull and crossbones are symbolic of mortality, teaching them that death in this realm means the end of his affliction and the entrance to a new and better life. In private, members of the craft are often seen going about their business with one trouser leg raised, signaling that they possess a leg up on non-members. And a tradition of bonesmen is to set their timepieces 5 minutes ahead to demonstrate their superiority in society.
"Big deal," snapped Murrah. "How are our leaders involved?"
History proves that the Ivy League and Yale in particular are production facilities for the CIA and the establishment. Alphonso Taft, the father of William Howard Taft, your 27th president, and the creator of what eventually became the United Nations, was one of the founding members of the order. After spending the summer of 1832 in Germany, the other member, General William Huntington Russell, returned to Yale University with the authority to form Chapter 322. In 1856, Skull and Bones was incorporated as Russell Trust, and since then has been the premier secret society of all the Ivy League schools. Each year only 15 juniors are tapped to accept or reject the group. Usually none reject, and as any time there are between 500 and 600 active members.
Under rendition, we've learned from some of them that a number of disturbing rituals go on inside of the walls of the structure called the tomb. Like what? Cottle asked, bug-eyed and chewing slowly. Part of the initiation process, explained the emir.
A ceremony called connubial bliss takes place inside a coffin where the celebrant lies naked reciting his past sexual encounters. There's another part that involves occultist chants and bloodletting. There's also the consumption of blood from a skull-shaped urek, and there are believed to be at least 3 sets of skulls and bones on display inside its walls.
One set belonging to Indian leader Geronimo, no less.
Students on the campus often report hearing sounds of agony coming from the tomb.
Cottle stopped them. That sounds like some devil-worshipping shit.
Absolutely.
Part of their oath says the hangman equals death, the devil equals death, death equals death. Speaking of death, said Mira sarcastically, is there anyone involved who hasn't been dead for 100 years?
Of course, answered Emir Taki. He passed him a book. Wise Men, 6 Friends and the World They Made. Handwritten on the inside cover were a list of some of the better-known Bones families. Or read them. The Bundys, of Boston, Massachusetts. The Davisons, involved with J.P. Morgan. The Gilmans, of Hingham, Massachusetts. The Harrimans made their money in railroads. The Lords, of Cambridge, Massachusetts. The Paynes, involved with Standard Oil. The Perkins, of Boston, Massachusetts. The Phelps, of Dorchester, Massachusetts. The Pillsburys, of baking fame. Whoa, so they made their dough with dough. The Rockefellers, of politics, Standard Oil and Exxon Oil. Or a turn to Emir Taghi. I heard somewhere that the way they make the double X's in Exxon means something funny. The Emir answered. It symbolizes the double cross of Freemasonry. Please, continue. The Sloanes made their money in retail. The Tafts, of Braintree, Massachusetts. The Wadsworths, of Newton, Massachusetts. The Ware-Ushers made their money in lumber. And the Whitneys, of Watertown, Massachusetts. Then Emir continued. Collectively they are known as the Boston Brahmin.
Through membership in the order and interconnecting family ties, just shy of incestuous, many Old Englanders lay the bedrock for what became New England and American aristocracy. Much of it with the wealth they created from a number of private and criminal ventures such as slave trading and opium smuggling, courtesy of ties with the infamous British East India Company. Every year, new families are brought into the fold, and from them we get names like Dan Quayle, Al Gore,
John Forbes Carey, Prescott Sheldon Bush, George Herbert Walker Bush, and George Walker Bush, all of whom rose to power through the order. I don't know about that, said Santana. The Bushes are from Texas. They made their money through oil. By now Ilm was flowing freely about the room, making Corporal Doe's senses sharp. No, he's right, said Doe calmly. The Bushes as well as the Pierces claim to be distant relatives of the Windsors. Prescott Sheldon Bush, the former senator of Connecticut, and George Herbert Walker were originally settled on the East Coast, and both belonged to companies that made a shitload of money from wars. Prescott Bush sat on the board of directors at the Brown Brothers Harriman firm during the 1920s, 30s, and 42nds when funds from rich families like the Dulles, Rockefellers, Fords, and DuPonts were funneled through Nazi corporations like IG, Farben and Fritz Thysson's Union Bank Corporation to help finance Adolf Hitler and his SS. The tall one interrupted.
That is well known. What you may not have known is that Mr. Bush and Mr. Hussein have been doing arms deals for years. Their transactions were handled through the Bank of Credit and Commerce Internacional, BCCI, and Banca Nacional del Lavato, BNL. So whether it is a bullet that kills you or the deadly sarin gas, it is likely that it was sold to Mr. Hussein by your very own president. And to this very day, the Bush families have interests in a business group whose Helgian investments make those seem tame by comparison. Our lands are for sale. After their destruction, many of Mr. Bush's businesses associates like Kaki, Redwater, and Holly Barton will reap enormous profits from rebuilding them.
For real, said Davenport, masticating, the Bushes ain't real Texans. George didn't bring the family south until the late 70s when he was head of the CIA. By 1980 they had helped make Midland the richest town in America, and that's fucked up cause believe me, the rest of West Texas ain't nothing nice. It was all on the advice his political advisors, explained the emir. The establishment saw that the average American voters were fed up with preppy, upper-crust politicians and big words that they couldn't relate to. They were looking for someone who spoke their language. Enter Bush speak, said Murrah. Absolutely. The Bushes are no fools. They are in fact an American dynasty. Their particular brand of magic has created a totally new identity for their family in under 20 years thanks to the dumbing down of American and their shortened attention spans. The emir looked around the room at the shura and Marines quietly shaking their heads. You know, brothers, we are alike in many ways. They call us militants and racists too, but when the shit gets thick, who do they go and get? The agency has had their eye on us for a long time. Mr. Bush knows that if he wants to throw down he'd better bring his guns because we would rather die than to be trapped in his new world hell. Cottle had been studying the faces in the room too. He'd observed that without the lengthy beards and ceremonial this and that, a lot of them looked just like. They call us niggers and you sand niggers, he said. But I liken the acronym for nigga that's on the tape. With that the discussion continued into the night. Groggy and disoriented, the Marines woke just before daybreak, their heads touching as they lay forming a circle in the desert sand. All their equipment had been restored and Zarqawi was looking down on them. He spoke just before the land cruiser pulled off. We are forever bound Kruf Bayet, an oath of allegiance.
So stay strong, my brothers, and keep your head up. They know we fade up, and soon they will give a fuck.